San Suu Kyi, leader of the National League for Democracy, spent more than 15 years in detention, most of it under house arrest. She was released from her third period of detention on Saturday, 13th November 2010. Early life. Aung San Suu Kyi was born on June 19, 1945, daughter of Burma's independence hero, Aung San, who was assassinated when she was only 2 years old. Aung San Suu Kyi was educated in Burma, India, and the United Kingdom. While studying at Oxford University, she met Michael Aris, a Tibet scholar who she married in 1972. They had 2 sons, Alexander and Kim. Returned to Burma. Aung San Suu Kyi returned to Burma in 1988 to nurse her dying mother, and soon became engaged in the country's nationwide democracy uprising. The military regime responded to the uprising with brute force, killing up to 5,000 demonstrators on August 8, 1988. Following a military coup on September 18, 1988, on September 24, 1988, a new pro-democracy party, the National League for Democracy, was formed. Aung San Suu Kyi was appointed General Secretary. Aung San Suu Kyi gave numerous speeches calling for freedom and democracy, and political activities continued across the country. 1990 elections. Facing increasing domestic and international pressure, the dictatorship was forced to call a general election, held in 1990. As Aung San Suu Kyi began to campaign for the NLD, she and many others were detained by the regime. Aung San Suu Kyi was banned from personally standing in the election. Despite conditions around the elections being far from free and fair, with Aung San Suu Kyi and other democracy activists being detained, biased media, and intimidation of politicians, the voting on the day was relatively free and fair. The NLD won a staggering 82% of the seats in parliament. The dictatorship never recognized the results of the election, and refused to hand over power. Released for 5 years, Aung San Suu Kyi was held under house arrest until July 1995. When released, she faced restrictions on travel. On March 27, 1999, Aung San Suu Kyi's husband, Michael Aris, died of cancer in London. He had petitioned the Burmese authorities to allow him to visit Aung San Suu Kyi one last time, but they had rejected his request. He had not seen her since a Christmas visit in 1995. The government always urged Aung San Suu Kyi to join her family abroad, but she knew that she would not be allowed to return to Burma. Detained again in 2000, Aung San Suu Kyi was again placed under house arrest after repeated attempts to leave the capital, Rangoon, to hold political meetings in other parts of the country. Released again in 2002, Aung San Suu Kyi was released from house arrest and with freedom to travel around the country. The release was part of a deal negotiated by UN envoy on Burma, Razali Ismail. He had facilitated secret meetings between Aung San Suu Kyi and the military. Confidence-building steps had been agreed, including that the dictatorship would stop the vehement attacks on Aung San Suu Kyi in the media, and the NLD would stop publicly calling for sanctions, although its policy of still supporting targeted economic sanctions remained. However, when it came to move from confidence-building meetings, and instead start dealing with matters of substance, the dictatorship refused to engage in any meaningful dialogue. As a low-level envoy without significant political backing from the UN itself or the international community, Razali was unable to persuade the generals to move the dialogue forward. After waiting patiently, Aung San Suu Kyi began to travel the country, holding meetings at which tens of thousands of people turned out to see her, dashing the hopes of the generals that during her long period of detention the people would have forgotten her, and her support would have waned. The dictatorship began using members of the Union Solidarity and Development Association to harass and attack NLD meetings. This political militia was set up and organized by the military, with Then Shui, dictator of Burma, as its president. It later transformed as the Union Solidarity and Development Party, the political party front for the military in the elections held on November 7, 2010. On May 30, 2003, members of the USDA attacked a convoy of vehicles Aung San Suu Kyi was traveling in. It was an attempt by the dictatorship to assassinate Aung San Suu Kyi, using a civilian front so as not to take the blame. Aung San Suu Kyi's driver managed to drive her to safety, but more than 70 of Aung San Suu Kyi's supporters were beaten to death. The attack became known as the Dipayan Massacre. The dictatorship claimed it was a riot between two political groups, incited by the NLD. The United Nations General Assembly called for the incident to be investigated, but it never was. Detained again following the attack, Aung San Suu Kyi was held in detention, and then placed back under house arrest. During this period of detention, conditions were much stricter than in the past. Her phone line was cut, her post stopped, and National League for Democracy volunteers providing security at her compound were removed in December 2004. Diplomats were generally not allowed to meet her, although occasionally UN envoys and US government officials were allowed to meet her. However, even UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was not allowed to meet her when he visited the country in 2009. In May 2009, just days before her period of house arrest was due to expire, Aung San Suu Kyi was arrested and charged with breaking the terms of her house arrest, which forbids visitors, after John Yetta, a United States citizen, swam across Inya Lake and refused to leave her house. In August 2009 she was convicted, and sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. In an apparent attempt to placate international outrage about the trial, the sentence was reduced to 18 months under house arrest. By coincidence, this meant her release date turned out to be just 6 days after elections held in Burma, thereby ensuring that once again she was in detention during election. International support. Aung San Suu Kyi has won numerous international awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize, the Sakharov Prize from the European Parliament, and the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom. She has called on people around the world to join the struggle for freedom in Burma, saying, "Please use your liberty to promote ours."